What's going on, guys? It's Michael from GPURisers.com, back again today with our 3070 Ti rig build. So the first couple minutes of this video will be setting this up. I already have the motherboard on here, the TB250 by BioStar, and I also have our 1600 watt EVGA power supply all plugged in and ready to go. Well, it's not plugged in, but we have everything screwed in, and that's all set to go and ready to get all of these cards put onto it. So we have two 8-pins right here on every 3070 Ti that we have. These are all 3070 Ti Holo amp editions by Zotac. So each of these will be powered by a single strand 8-pin from our power supply. One of these right here. It will be connected to a 8-pin splitter that we do sell. The white ones are 18 AWG. 18 AWG is the gauge size for the wire. So the lower the gauge, the thicker the wire is, and the thicker the wire is, the more watts that it can handle. So it's very important, especially with these pulling about 200 watts per, you want to make sure that you have true 18 AWG or 18 gauge wire. So since there will be a single strand for each of these, that means that we need 6 VGA ports on our power supply. Now we have everything already plugged in right here. There are 3 here and 3 rows. So that means that there's a total of 9 on a 1600 watt power supply. Now in comparison, the 1300 watt from EVGA only has 6, which still would be enough to handle all of this. Well, granted, this is going to be pulling about 1250 watts, so it would be exceeding that 80% limit that we talked about on the prior video. So since 6 of these VGA cables are going to be dedicated for our 3070 Ti's right here, that means we're going to have 3 available for other uses. And by other uses, I do mean the risers. Now, I normally use Molex to power risers. If I run out of VGA cables, Molex is perfectly fine. However, if you can use a 6-pin to power your risers, that is preferred. And so 2 risers for each 8-pin, and we have 3 8-pins. That means we are going to be able to power every riser on here with a dedicated 8-pin cable from the power supply, so there's no need to be using Molex. So that's what we're going to do. So I just wanted to give a little bit rundown on that. I don't want to ramble too much because I did on the last video. So I'm going to go ahead and get all 6 of these plugged in with the risers here. So I actually am going to do one real quick. I'm going to show you guys plugging in the riser, how I'm going to power it, how I'm going to power this, and then I'm going to just do the other 5 real quick off camera. So let's go ahead and get this first one plugged in. All right, so we have our 8 capacitor risers out. We will be using these models for this 3070 Ti build. We have our 1X chip there and our black 3.0 USB cable. All 3 of these come with each pack in a 6-pack of risers. Also, like I just mentioned, I will be using splitters. We are going to be using our black splitters Here's a single 8-pin from the EVGA power supply broken off into 2 single 8-pins. There are 2 pins at the end of these that we are going to slide off so that they are able to fit our 6-pin on the back of these risers right here. So let's go ahead and get this on a card up on here, and we are actually going to boot it up with a single card on there, making sure everything works. I do need to flash MinerStat OS onto our SSD, so I'm going to go ahead and get all of that done right now. I'm gonna try not to ramble too much. I just want to give you guys as many tips as possible. We do have our 8-pin connected right here from the EVGA power supply. That is connected to our 8-pin splitter, which is plugged into the back of the riser right back there. We have another 8-pin here that's broken off to a 6-pin. A lot of these cables that do come with it are 8-pin to 6-pin. I do zip tie the 6-pin back onto the cable, especially when you're doing like routing and you're pulling cables through these rigs. These things can get caught really, easily on a lot of things. So I do suggest zip tying these back. Little tidbit right there. So let's go ahead and get this graphics card powered up. All right, guys, so we're back. I flashed the SSD with MinerStat. I have one of these up on the board and it is going. I have had this run for about 10 minutes now, and here you can actually see the lighting effect that this board on the top gives. So we're going to go ahead and see what the airflow is like on these cards. Like I said in the past video, this back fan right here should be blowing air straight out through the bottom. which actually when you put your hand right there, you can actually feel the air coming through right there. So that's pretty good. Right now, I do have this running using NB Miner on Ethash with the LHR unlock, but I don't know if that's going to be what's most profitable. I just wanted to go ahead and get something up and running and being able to lock in right around 200 watts. So now that this one's been tested for a while and we have everything plugged in, now we can go ahead and kind of replicate this. And when I boot it up, it should be mining the exact same thing with the exact same wattage, the same overclocks, everything like that. And then we'll be able to get to the next step, which is going to be testing out what's most profitable. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other two put onto this row. We are going to have the other three on the top row. I decided to start this one right here, and I'm going to stagger it differently than on the top row because that back fan is shooting out air. Now it's not so hot right now, but after a couple of minutes, this thing will ramp up, a couple hours, days, heat will be shooting out of that back vent area. So I started this one off all the way to the left side of this rig so I can have one here and then have one here. I did that because the power supply is right there. So if I would have started on this side and staggered it every other slot, then the hot air would have been hitting the power supply right here. So to avoid this whole situation with the airflow right there, I'm going to be starting the top row right here on this side. So let me go ahead and get the other two plugged in. I'm going to test it one last time before putting that final row up there. All right, guys, we're back. I have 3 of these RTX 3070 Ti's installed in mining. They've been going for about 5 minutes now, all stable. They are actually getting a little bit less than 200 watts. I have a power limit on MinerStat of 200 watts, and these are actually fluctuating between, I want to say, 165 to 190. So that's kind of interesting. I'm sure the power fluctuations are in relation to the LHR mode that they're on, but we'll figure all of that out at a different time. Now that these 3 are going, I'm going to be staggering the next 3 up here, kind of so that the hot air will shoot down right in the middle of all of these, which is not so perfect because the hot air is going to be pulled in by the fans right there. But I think what I'm going to have to do on a rig like this, depending on the temperatures, I mean 165 watts is fine, but if these are all nearing around 200 watts, or possibly later on an algorithm that needs to use a little more power, just say 220 watts, I will need to add fans in the back over there to be able to push out, you know, all the hot air out this way. So we'll just have to see as we go on. I can always add fans. I actually have server fans, 4,000 RPM fans. If, you know, worst case scenario, I have those left over from the Radeon 7 rig that I used to have. So whatever it's going to take to keep this thing cool, I'm going to do. But so far, all is good. I'm going to go ahead and power this down. I'm going to add the next 3 on top, and I'll see you guys back here in a second. All right, so I got the 3 up here, the 3 are down there. Everything seems to be plugged in. Again, I am using a 8-pin PCIe splitter, the white ones, to power each card. And then I am using the black splitters to power each riser. That's a total of 9 VGA ports from our 1600 watt EVGA power supply. So that said, let's go ahead and crank this on and make sure everything looks okay. The TB250 starts for a second and then shuts off and then starts. So it's a little strange, but okay, all of them are powered, fans are running, all the risers are good. Let's check the PCIe chips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red LEDs. Everything seems to have power, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the dashboard on MinerStat, make sure all of these are popping up. And mining, they have default settings for Ethash right now, so just something as a baseline. And then once we have a baseline and they're all showing up, then we can change values around, overclocks, everything like that. So I'm gonna go check that out and I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. This has been mining for about 15 minutes now. I have some conservative overclocks on this. I don't remember exactly what they were. I know I have a 200 watt power limit, and I believe the memory I have pinned at 2200 on Linux, which will, you know, equate to about 1100 on Windows. So I'm getting around 53.5 mega hash on these, and the wattage is actually fairly low. Like I said before, it's, I want to say about 160 to 180 watts now after mining for a while, and that's per card. So the total system wattage is actually lower than what I initially thought. And just from running brief numbers, it looks like Ethash actually with the LHR from NB Miner is more profitable than mining Kapow and Ravencoin. just because the power consumption for Ravencoin would be much more on these. But that's at the time of filming. I have to run those numbers a little more. Don't take that as gold. So I just wanted to get some rough numbers for you guys on these. I'm going to go ahead and let this run for a while. Just my initial testing. I know I never did a part 2 on the the 3070 Ti's, and I'm not going to. I'm going to be using this rig as an example. But these LHR unlocks, I want to get it working with T-Rex miner. I haven't done that yet, but at least for NB miner, I'm not sure if other miners are having the same issue, but it looks like the LHR lock will enable, and then it will ramp it down. Like I think the default's 69, it'll go to 68.9, 68.8, and so there's a lot of fluctuations I see. And honestly, there just seems like a lot of issues with these miners that are trying to get around this LHR block. But this seems to be pretty steady, so I'm going to leave this for a little bit. I'm going to come back to it in a couple of days, and I'll do a third video on this entire rig, and we can do more of an in-depth analysis. I just wanted to get something today stable, in mining and going. And if you have, the overclocks that are on here, for instance, I did bump it up a little bit more, and cards started to drop. And I was surprised at that, because I did do a little bit of testing on a singular for the Win 3 3070 Ti, and we didn't really have issues at those overclocks. But when you have 6 cards, you're kind of playing with the silicon lottery here. And some have, better overclocking capabilities and can be more stable than others, despite being, all looking the exact same in the exact same model. So, I mean, you can get really in depth and fine tuning with these cards. You can have, one overclock for this, one overclock for that. Just doing quick testing on this in the 10 minutes, 15 minutes that this has been going, I noticed 2 cards were dropping, and it was the same 2 cards. So it's kind of like playing with overclocks, and the weakest link is going to be the baseline for the overclocks for the entire rig. Now, of course, you can have just say 2200 memory for those 2, and then you could bump up the memory on the other 4 until you start getting one that drops, and then leave it at that at a stable overclock, and then do that. You could fine tune these things really. But when you're talking about fine tuning, the difference between the overclock on the the weakest card in here, the 2 weakest cards in here, compared to an overclock of the most capable card on ETH hash, we're really only talking about 2 to 3 mega hash, which is granted about a 5% difference. So it's definitely something to look into, but just for me, the 5% difference for now is not worth the crashes and everything like that. I want to see how stable this is, because right now it's stable overclocks, but in a day or 2 days or maybe even 3 days, something might drop off, and then we have to downclock the whole thing a little bit more, adjust overclocks to be even more conservative, and then see where the baseline is from there. And once you find that baseline, that's when you can start fine-tuning them a little more easily. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this as is. I'm going to let it mine for, I want to say, at least a couple of days. And then actually in the third part, I was going to go a little more in depth with this, but I do want to leave this because it is doing the LHR mode. It's a little more not a little more, it's less stable than a normal 3070, 3080 rig would be. But I'm going to do a follow-up to this video. It's likely going to be one of those videos with me sitting in front of the screen and sharing my screen so that you guys can see exactly what I'm doing here, on the software side at least. So what I'm probably going to do with this rig is, if Ethereum is what's profitable to mine, or I know Ravencoin kind of flips back and forth with being more profitable or less profitable, but I'm going to create an Ethereum wallet and mine to that Ethereum wallet only using this rig. That way we can really see what the income is generated, over time with this rig. And, every month I could come back and make a video and say, okay, month 3, this is how much Ethereum we have mined. Was this a good investment? Was it not a good investment? And kind of do an analysis with the market conditions in the future. Because the reality with this also is, if Ethereum is close with, Ravencoin on profitability, Ravencoin might be profitable for more, for a week at one point. But it's likely only going to be more profitable by about 5 to 10%, and then it's going to dip back below, and it's kind of going to be a wave pattern on what's most profitable with these 3070 Ti's. And when you're doing a profitability analysis over a week or even a month, that's important. That can change it, just ever so slightly. But especially once you get into months, like 6, 7, or a year and a half. those small little swings will even out. And it won't be a perfect representation if you were to be able to be on top of it 24/7 and profit switch, to this, to that. And I know MinerStat, OS has profit, switching capabilities, but every time you have to rebuild DAGs or switch algorithms or something like that, there's a probability or a chance that this rig will completely crash in doing so. So if you guys can tell, I'm all about stability. I have a bunch of these rigs, I have a bunch of different cards, and I've been doing this for years and years, and squeezing out an extra 2 to 3% of performance and hash or even efficiency on the wattage side doesn't outweigh stability. If you have to restart your rig constantly, or one card is constantly crashing and it's out for hours or days before you can reset it, it's not worth all the hassle of trying to get that tiny bit more of an improvement on it. So that's always something to take into account. That's just my 2 cents. But other than that, we have our splitters on here. We have our 8-cap risers on here. All of them are working fine. We actually have our black splitters on here as well, powering all of the risers. Now, as for heat, this has been running for a little bit. It is kind of hot in here. The back plates on these are very surprisingly warm. But besides that, they haven't gotten any warmer, so it's not like they're getting hotter and hotter and hotter. I do believe they'll be fine. The temperatures readouts on these have been fine. They're all in 40s or 50s degrees Celsius. So like I said, I'm gonna let this mine for a couple of days, make sure that it's stable, and then I can slowly start tweaking things. It's not really worth it to start tweaking right off the bat. I'm a big proponent of finding a very strong, stable bottom on these cards. You might run them for an hour and say, okay, they're stable, now I can increase. And when you're messing around with overclocks, trying to get the perfect settings on it right off the bat, like I said, you're gonna have stability issues. And stability is not 4 hours of it running well. Stability is not a day of it running well. You want these things to be able to run for weeks and months without having issues. So that's why I'm going to wait a couple of days, give this some time to warm up and make sure everything is good. Then I am going to start messing with the overclocks a little bit more. But that's going to be everything for this video, guys. I do appreciate you guys watching. If you guys like what you guys are watching, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really does help the GPURisers team out. And if you'd like for us to do anything, with these 3070 Ti's, drop a comment down below. We will be doing testing on different algorithms with these. However, just for now, probably by the time you see this posted, we'll be messing around with these. So please drop a comment down below if you want any algorithm in specific. And as always, guys, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you guys next time.